Yo, welcome. We are live on the Instagrams and on the YouTube this morning. My name is Stuart. This is Ragnarok Survival, and this is your SitRep for the 29th of April 2022. A lot of news and not a lot of time this morning, so I'm going to try and punch through this as quickly as possible. Let's lead off with my most interesting thing that I saw overnight. Iran and China declared deepened military cooperation to confront U.S. unilateralism. I'm doing a Joe Biden. Straight up first thing in the morning. Not enough coffee. Hang on. That's better. Unilateralism. That's what I was trying to get out. So China's obviously afraid of what the US is doing. They've been acting in that way for quite some time. So is Russia. Iran is also there. Iran, China just released this information that they're deepening their ties. We know that China and Russia are deepening their ties. This is something that I've been talking about for weeks now on these reports. The BRIC or the BRICS or the what other BRICS, if we chuck in North Korea and South Africa as well. But essentially what we're seeing is a loose alliance that was always there, that the West had always been afraid of, is now starting to really actually come together, or being forced together, really. So on top of this, what we're seeing is the rise of a new monetary system that is, like, I don't know how that's going to look, what it's going to look like, but it certainly appears to be going that way. With China, with Russia, what the Russian sanctions are actually doing. They're designed to hurt Russia. What they're actually doing is forming a new monetary system. So this is the first one that I was looking at. Iran, China. Iran obviously is going full steam ahead with their nuclear program. In response to this, the US came out and said, "Hey, we're going to smash that nuclear capability that you got, Iran," which I just think is probably just total rhetoric. Is just piss in the wind, basically. I don't think they're actually going to do anything about it, but I think they're shaking their fist and maybe rattling a little bit of a saber, but they don't really have too much of a saber to rattle against Iran. I don't think they'd actually step in there and do anything. My personal take on it, but that's what I'm seeing. But anyway, Iran, China, we're seeing the what I'm sure will be called the axis of evil being formed right in front of our eyes here. And I call it the axis of evil. I think that's the propaganda from the West. That's what we're going to get. For those of you who haven't joined me on these before, I try and keep a pretty even keel and take in information from all across the different sources, the spectrums, all the propagandas, and hope that if I can pick out as varied as lies as I can get, that somewhere in the middle there'll be some sort of truth. The truth is out there, as Fox Mulder would say. Okay, weather effects. Sorry, there's not. I didn't put these in order this morning either, so we might jump around from World War III to weather effects to Europe to blah blah blah. But anyway, weather effects. This one is quite interesting. This was a map that was released on Zero Hedge that shows wildfire outbreak sweeping across the US amid the mega drought that they're having. So they are having a huge drought. There's another couple of stories about this drought as well. This is a big deal in the US, and they're getting smashed by fires. So this is what happened in Australia in 2019. We had a huge drought situation that had lasted a number of years. It created the environment for a mega fire. I don't know how else to describe it. I actually helped in those fires, helped fight those fires. I experienced that. It was in and around my house. It was in and around where I live. So it was a very busy couple of months during that point. And I just remember thinking, like, this is about as close to apocalyptic as I can think of anything right now. And that's what the US is seeing. And I remember saying at the time, fighting those fires, going, I don't think this is this abnormal thing. Like, I went through huge fires when I was a little kid. I went through huge fires when I was a teenager. In Australia, these things happen. But these ones, they were like way beyond anything that I'd experienced before. So I think this is going to be sort of the norm, and we're going to start to see these extreme weather effects. We need to start thinking about that, how we build our houses, where we build our houses, how we clear property around us, how we backburn and things like that. US is experiencing these fires. US is experiencing a mega drought. The difference here, US is experiencing mega drought. Australia experienced a mega drought. Australia has under 1% of the world's fresh water supply in it. The US, go and have a look at how much the US has. I think you'll be quite surprised. The fact that they're having a drought right now with the amount of water that they actually have in that country and can probably move around that country, I find it quite surprising. Anyway, jump on Zero Hedge, check out that map. I think it's quite interesting. Okay, in our own backyard, more World War sort of III news, or the precursor to World War III. Australia may train regional armies against China. Australia's Labor Party, who is not the party that is in power, so people who don't know Australian politics, we've got two parties. They're both probably as useless as each other, just like any other Western political system right now. The Labor Party is the one that's not in at the moment, and we're about to come into election. So a lot of promises are getting thrown out there. A lot of big rhetoric's getting chucked out there. They've said that they're going to start pumping up the local forces around us. The Australian Pacific Defence School is what they're going to start up. Historically speaking, the party we have in at the moment, called the Liberal Party, which is like I think it's actually an ironic name. Like in Australia, you know how we nickname people with red hair Bluey, and maybe tall people Shorty or something like that. Those ironic Australian names. That's what the Liberal Party is to me. They're not very liberal. Liberal Party, anyway, has historically been very pro-military. They put heaps of money into the military. When Labor gets in, they curtail that, and the military gets cut. So the fact that Labor's coming out now and they're running on this as one of their platform pieces, their speaking pieces, that's pretty interesting to me. It shows me that there's probably a bit of unilateral agreement there that there's a problem with China, and we need to start talking about it and dealing with it very, very quickly. Let's jump over to back over to Europe. We'll talk more about Finland and Sweden. Finland and Sweden will be welcomed with open arms if they apply for NATO membership. That's from Jens Stoltenberg. So NATO has come out. The boss man of NATO has come out and said, if these guys want to join, they're going to come straight in. We're going to welcome them straight in. Again, this is I think a fait accompli. Like, these guys are going to go in unless something major happens to disrupt that, i.e. Russia move on one of those countries or start kicking up things. I'm not going to go into this analysis right now, but I've been having chats with somebody, like a friend who's a bit of a source over in the eastern part of Europe. He's got some super interesting news. He's got some super interesting analysis on it. But essentially, what we've been talking about is Moldova, and how what it looks like is Russia's definitely going to push into there. There's a number of different things going on there as well. Moldova might be going into the EU. This might force them into the EU, and that's going to have consequences then if Russia pushes in. Obviously, there's a section of Moldova, that Transnistria, that's already a breakaway state, essentially. That Russia is not claiming, but is that's what they'll be moving on, that part there. And there's a bit of fighting apparently broken out there, or at least explosions that are broken out in that area. And there's even rumblings about NATO as well, Moldova and NATO. So that's going to have large effects in that area. We need to keep our eye on this whole situation as it starts to bubble up. So Odessa seems like the likely route. There seems to be more attacks happening in Odessa. Maybe Russia is pushing in there. Maybe they're going to try and create that corridor there. For what end? Who knows? Is it to envelop Ukraine? Possibly, because that will create another front, and it will basically be a big C shape around Ukraine then. Or is it for other purposes? Is it to push into Moldova and then have a forward pushing effect? Russia has basically a forward operating base now to affect a whole heap of countries down around that sort of southeastern area of Europe. Worthwhile watching. UK Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has already said they're going to send weapons to Moldova. So they're already backing Moldova. Will Moldova become the new Ukraine? That's what the question bouncing around my head. UK has been very talkative over the past 24 hours. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, again, has come out and insisted NATO must expand its remit to boost Indo-Pacific security and preempt threats, singling out helping Taiwan defend itself. So NATO, Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization, it's sitting up in a different part of the world, the opposite part of the world. And now they're saying, hey, we need to expand ourselves down into this Asia-Pacific area. Obviously, this is our neck of the woods in Australia. So this is there's been rumblings about this. Is NATO a global thing? It's not. It's definitely not. This has been Europe and American sort of thing. And this has been to curtail Russian or Soviet power originally. So are they getting too big for their boots, or should NATO be doing this? These are the kind of questions I think we need to start asking ourselves. Should NATO be stepping into this sort of conflict, or thinking this way? Are they the world police? Is that what their role is? Interestingly, she also said, Liz Truss also said, the Ukraine is our war. And this rhetoric has come out before, but like I always like to pick this out, like how the language is being used to affect us. Like if you're watching this propaganda, and I know a lot of people are just seeing the Western side of this propaganda, that you would start to believe that Ukraine is our war and we have to do this for democracy. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. Sorry, here's that other story on the drought in the US. Lake Mead, great name for a lake. Lake Mead has just fallen to an unprecedented low. Sources of water for millions drying up. Hey, dog. So, we're seeing this mega drought. It's going to have a huge effect. Just the water supply alone. Other effects are they use a lot of hydro electricity within the US. So electricity might be running low in certain areas of the US. And then we've obviously got fires that can follow on from drought and usually do. So a lot of effects that are going to be coming out of this. Also in the US East Coast inventories hit with supply shock ahead of summer driving season. So we're talking about oil here, and guess what that's going to do to price for the US market? Shoot it up. And as US goes, so do the rest of the world. So yeah, we probably have a little bump in prices, worldwide oil prices. Biden came out and asked for another $33 billion of US taxpayer money to throw into the Ukraine. Why not, huh? When you're printing imaginary money and you're not even hiding it anymore, why not just throw another $33 billion into a foreign conflict? I probably think there's some things he could do domestically to help out, but I'm not the president of the United States, so not my circus, not my monkey. Let's just skip over that one for now. And after I'd read that one, I then saw this piece of news. US economy has unexpectedly declined at 1.4% annual pace in the first quarter of this year. So data started coming out for around the world. And we've seen a few funky things being thrown out there. One of them, that the US economy has declined by 1.4%, and they said unexpectedly. Like, who wasn't expecting that? What kind of analysis was sitting there going like, no, I think we're all right. I think we'll grow. Yep. After looking at all the factors that we've seen at the moment. On the other side, China's economic growth rose by 4.8% in the first quarter. So that went above expectations. There you go. Germany, inflation still on the up and up, rises to 7.4% in April. So we're now at a 40-year high. So if we keep going back just a little bit more, keep going up, then we're going to hit maybe that highs they had in between World War I and World War II, which weren't good. That was actually called hyperinflation. So German foreign minister has said they're very concerned about price developments and said that a severe crisis could ensue. A number of financial writers, experts, analysis pundits have come out in the last 48 hours and have started the rumbling about recession, about maybe we're already in it too. So what people need to understand about financial data and about reporting on it is that there is a lag in it. So when we're looking at information, we're already behind that information, or we're already living in the future as far as financial markets are concerned. So it has an effect on what happens here and now. But when we're looking at things like the first quarter, that's all done. That's all packaged and sorted. We're already in the second quarter and we're close to the third quarter. So, we're outside of the cycle to a certain extent. The data doesn't reflect necessarily what's happening here and now. So that's why when people say, "Oh, we could already be in a recession," it's because we can't actually see what's actually happening on the ground right now. And a number of people have come out overnight and said, there's a couple of markers out there that this could be a lot bigger than we thought. I don't know who thought, but if you're anything like me, I thought, well, this could be a big one. This could be, depression sort of ground that we're walking on at the moment. All right. Last couple of stories that I'll go on with because I've got to head off this morning about food supply just in the US. So just sticking to the US this morning. Planting delays in Wisconsin, freeze warnings in southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois might delay planting for farmers. So obviously there's spring over there. Illinois rain continues to delay planting. What else we got? Iowa, what's keeping them? Iowa's spring planting season continues to be delayed, now falling well behind recent years and the 5-year average after several rounds of heavy rain and severe weather prevented many from getting into the fields over the warmer weekend. So does that sound odd to anyone that I'm talking about a mega drought in parts of the US, in the western parts of the US, and I'm talking about too much rain to actually get out there and plant? But they aren't clear cut, and we don't exactly know what they're going to do. Like, we know to a fairly good degree what the weather will do on a relatively short timeline. But when we start seeing effects like this, and I'm talking about the weather patterns going more and more, like the needle is going up and down more like this, more heat, more evaporation, more drought, more rain here, weather effects, more runoff, more salination, more evaporation, more rain, more drought. That's what we're going to see. More intense weather effects moving into the future. And again, I think like in Australia, we're kind of in the frame set. I mean, if you live in rural areas in Australia, you kind of have the frame set that, yeah, that's the way the world works. We have lived that. Australia is a relatively harsh country when it comes to actually farming. We go through droughts regularly. We go through floods regularly. We go through fires regularly. But what we're going to see is much, much more intense ones. And we have a food system that is, over time, getting more and more centralized. And that means more and more fragile, or more and more exposed to a large-scale event. Being that if one thing comes in and disrupts that, then it affects a lot of people, millions and millions of people. And again, this is yet another harbinger of the food apocalypse. Every day I say this, I get on here and say this. There's yet another thing that I'm seeing on the news. And it's not just another one thing. There's another 4, 5, 6 things that I'm seeing daily now that happen to our food supply chain across the world in different places. But our food supply chain is getting affected. It will be disrupted. There will be issues with it. And I'm not saying that there's going to be no food and we're all going to starve and we're going to have to eat each other. What I'm saying is that it could be a slight effect, which increases prices at the supermarket. So we need to start budgeting that in. It could be a medium effect where we don't get the things that we want. And I certainly think that this is probably what it's going to be. We don't get a lot of the things we want. We have less access to food, and the food that we do get is more expensive. Or it could be extreme. That's my cool. Hey, come here. Wait, shush. Hey. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll wrap it up there. So, yep, keep your eye on this food sort of stuff. Keep your eye on these sort of situations that are developing. Asia Pacific, we've got Iran kind of joining the fray a little bit. Obviously, the Ukraine Moldova situation that's coming up there, so I'll be keeping my eye on that. And this food thing, as always, I say this is the most important thing. If you can't eat, nothing that's happening in Ukraine is going to matter. If you can't put food on the table for your family, then you're not going to give a shit what Johnny Depp is doing and who's suing who. Focus on this. Get in the gardens. Start growing your own food. Start connecting with local farmers. Start buoying up that local food system and making sure that your personal area, your space, your sphere of influence is what you can actually protect and look after. So keep doing that, guys. Keep prepping. Maybe think about building up more food stores. I need more coffee this morning. But yeah, apart from that, stay safe and Semper Paratus.